Get the power to do more with storable websites. More marketing, more engagement, more customers moving into your facility. Storable helps operators do more with the most powerful technology in self-storage. Learn more at storable.com/do-more.
Alrighty guys, it's 12:01. Let's go ahead and get started. So my name is Matthew Beal. I am a product marketing manager here at Storable, and I'm going to be your host for the 4 Operator Imperatives webinar series. And I wanted to start with a quick kind of webinar series at a glance. I wanted to kind of let you guys know where we're coming from and where we're heading with this series. So 2 weeks ago, we kicked off this new webinar series that we're calling the 4 Operator Imperatives. And we discussed kind of the state of the market before COVID-19, what did the market look like when it hit, and then what we've been seeing since then. And we introduced this concept called the 4 Operator Imperatives, which are 4 clear, actionable steps that you can take to put your business in a position of strength as you come up against those market forces. And today, we're excited to be diving into the first one of those imperatives, and that's optimizing your marketing spend. And in particular, we're going to be covering the essentials of SEO, which is also known as search engine optimization. And what we're going to be covering is kind of what is it, what are some steps that you can take to improve yours, and talking about how it can be one of the most cost-effective elements of your marketing mix to really ensure you're getting the most bang for your buck. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to be having another conversation on the same concept of optimizing your marketing spend. And it's going to be focused on how you can utilize PPC, or pay-per-click advertising, to acquire highly targeted and relevant leads for your facility. And so before we get started today, I wanted to review kind of the conversation we had a couple of weeks ago and just kind of make the case for why we need to be thinking about our marketing spend. And so in 2013 and 14 and 15, operators in this industry were seeing really unprecedented revenue and net operating income growth. And this attracted a lot of developers that were taking advantage of being able to build at either a 9 or a 10 cap rate and then sell those stabilized facilities at a 6 cap rate. And as you can see on this construction value put in place chart, that spread really attracted a good number of investors and developers, which resulted in an enormous amount of development activity. You can see that spike right there in around 15, 16. And as a result of that, we saw the largest development cycle that the industry has ever seen from 2015 to 18, where we were adding almost 1,000 new builds annually. And starting in 2019, we kind of noticed that the consumer demand wasn't really keeping up with that growth in supply. And so operators were starting to kind of have to figure out how they can be more efficient, both with their operational and their marketing efforts. And then COVID hit, which, that significantly accelerated that gap in consumer demand, which created a kind of this perfect storm of, increasing supply, decreasing demand. And so we saw that COVID has stopped a good amount of construction in its tracks as well. But it's important to note that we don't believe any of this is doom and gloom by any means. After all, the self-storage industry, even during the health crisis, has really continued to perform incredibly well relative to many other industries out there. But there are still challenges that remain, for sure. And so we wanted to create this webinar series, again, the 4 Operator Imperatives, to provide you with a framework that helps you, combat those market forces and ideally put your business in a position of strength coming out the other end of the health crisis and beyond, most importantly. And so each of these imperatives were distilled from countless conversations that we've been having here at Storable with our clients, with vendors, with subject matter experts, over the last year and really even more longer than that. But at the core of these is, how our savviest operators are approaching optimizing both the operational and marketing sides of their business in the face of these market forces. And so I wanted to start today by taking a quick peek at each of those. So first is optimizing your marketing spend. This imperative is really all about identifying the most effective marketing vehicles that you can possibly use for your business. And we're going to be discussing all the sources of marketing, including some that you don't even need to pay for, one we'll hear about today, to make sure that you're getting the most bang for your buck. And again, today's discussion is on the essentials of SEO, and that falls squarely into this imperative. We're going to be discussing what SEO is, the impacts it can have on your business, and give you some actionable steps that you can take to improve yours. And when done well, this can easily be one of the most cost-effective tools in your marketing tool belt. And one of the reasons that SEO in particular has become so important over the last several years is this shift in consumer shopping as people kind of are preferring more digital channels. And this was only accelerated by the COVID-19 health crisis. Things like, online retailers such as Amazon continue to grow. And, we see more and more brick and mortar businesses that are going out of business, unfortunately. But if you think about just the COVID-19 health crisis, just, call it the last 5 months or so, 4 or 5 months, how many people in your life are using Zoom today that didn't even know the company existed 6 months ago? Or how many cardboard boxes do you realistically have piling up in your house as you continue to order more and more from these online retailers, right? These are trends that probably aren't going away. They're becoming more and more normal in our life. And so what we want you to take away from this is that, that just general consumer desire for digital engagement has really become a broader expectation across our market. And it's not limited to millennials as it was in the past. But before we move on and actually jump into today's conversation too, real quick, we have 3 other imperatives that we're going to be discussing over the coming weeks. And so I just kind of wanted to give you guys a quick teaser there. One is rethinking the tenant experience. We're also going to be having some really strong conversations on simplifying and automating processes around your facility so that you can focus on providing value to your business in other ways. And lastly is amplifying your operating revenue by pursuing, different programs and services that maybe you hadn't thought about that make a lot of sense for your business. But I do want to save as much time as I possibly can because we have a really exciting guest today. So I want to jump into today's conversation. So I'm excited to be joined by Charles Needham for a discussion on the topic of SEO. And he's a digital marketing strategist here and frankly, an SEO guru. And he joins me here from Storable as well. And so Charles, I want to thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thanks, Matt. Yeah, glad to be here. Looking forward to diving into this with everyone.
Awesome. So before we get started today, would you mind kind of starting off by just giving the audience a little bit about kind of your professional history and your work in the SEO space?
Sure thing. Yeah, like Matt said, my name is Charles Needham, and I've been in the digital marketing space since 2005. Technical SEO is my specialty, and the reason I love it is because it essentially encompasses every other digital marketing strategy, either directly or indirectly, giving me new puzzles to work through every day, giving me dozens of different professional hats to wear. During my career, I've consulted with major e-commerce clients who do business internationally, but for the last 7 years or so, one of my primary focuses have been on helping brick and mortar based businesses and helping them stay competitive in their own local marketplaces.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. So let's jump right into today's conversation. So I want to start with a couple of questions, particularly aimed at the operators out there that are maybe just diving into SEO for the first time. And so let's start with the basics. Can you kind of help us by understanding what does SEO stand for and what does it mean to you specifically?
Yeah, sure thing. So SEO basically is search engine optimization. And so when we say search engines, we're talking about Google, Bing, Yahoo, search engines like these that allow customers to search for particular websites on the internet using keywords or key phrases. Realistically speaking, though, most folks use Google, and so that's what we're going to be discussing today in context. In as few words as I can say, SEO is ultimately the strategy of getting your website to rank as high as possible in organic sections of search engines so that customers can find your business when they're searching for storage. And this happens without your website being limited by an overall click budget. SEO, in my opinion, pound for pound, is the best and most cost-effective marketing strategy a business can undertake for themselves. Almost all purchasing decisions, from renting a storage unit to buying a home, typically will begin with someone online making a search. So making sure that your business appears above your competitors is critical for long-term success. Before we dive too far into what makes up a successful SEO program, though, let's take a look at sort of this behavior in action. So there are 3 main elements of a Google search result, and it's important to understand each of them in context for SEO. So the very first section is Google paid ads. When you enter a search query such as self-storage in Austin, you'll notice that the first 4 items are typically going to be advertisements, and this is commonly referred to as the PPC, pay-per-click section in the marketing world. Below the paid ads is typically going to be a map pack. This is powered partially by Google My Business, which is a service provided by Google. And if you haven't created a listing for your facility yet using Google My Business, we do highly recommend it. As you can see, it's a fantastic way to get visibility. We'll be diving a little bit deeper into this today, but we'll also be discussing it in greater detail in the coming weeks. After the map pack customers will see traditional organic search results, as we can see here. When people talk traditionally about ranking organically, this is usually what they mean. That said, the map pack is also a strong source of organic traffic as well. And for brick and mortar businesses, we're seeing a definite shift in behavior as people are beginning to become more comfortable interacting with map listings when making searches. So a successful SEO program means your website is being seen by the people searching for your service and products. This means more organic traffic, more organic leads, and more revenue as a result. Generally speaking, organic targeted traffic can produce higher quality leads than those obtained by ads. The average person these days has developed a sort of baseline ad blindness, where even if they see the ads and it registers in their mind, they sort of weigh them less subconsciously than the results that appear organically, because people are under the sort of assumption that these results aren't as manipulated as paid ad results. So it makes sense why there's sort of this inherent trust that people automatically have with businesses that rank high in organic search results. Meaning, not only will you get more clicks the higher you rank, but your overall trustworthiness will also seem higher as a direct result, creating a sort of self-feeding loop that increases your overall conversion rates.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And so one piece of that I'd really like for you to unpack, if you don't mind. Can you talk a little bit more about kind of how consumer trust is impacted by the ranking position? And then ultimately, I think it's also important to discuss why is it important to rank high?
Oh, for sure. So it's important to rank high for essentially one central reason, and that is the average user wants their answer fast and accurate. They don't want to spend time going through pages of results to get the answers that they're looking for. In fact, most searchers will rarely go beyond the first page. Now, don't get me wrong here, going from rank 100 to rank 20 for a competitive phrase is a very strong sign of progress, and it can even be very difficult to achieve to boot. That said, traffic results really start taking off once you hit that first page, and it exponentially increases from there to position number 1. So let's take a look at how this plays out in practicality. So when we think about how to value the importance of ranking in various positions, the best metric to use for that is going to be click-through rate. And simply, this means that out of all the potential customers that entered a search term where your website was, of course, eligible, what percentage of those people clicked on your website? And here's how that's going to break down. The first position will capture typically between 27% and 35% of total clicks on average, which is just a huge amount of potential customers. Second position, we'll see a drop to down about 15%. Third, we'll see about 10%. Fourth, about 5%. And then the fifth position is going to come in at under 5%. And then from there, as you would expect, it's going to continue to drop the further you rank out. So as you can imagine, that means ranking in positions 7 through 10 isn't very likely to drive as much volume to your facility as the top 3.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it kind of sounds like ranking near the top is incredibly important, but I'm also assuming it's going to take a little bit of work to do that. So for operators that kind of want to get started on improving their SEO presence and working towards that higher ranking, how do we think about what goes into an effective SEO program?
Oh, for sure. So in simple terms, everything that has anything to do with your brand online can have an effect on your search engine visibility. So there isn't a single SEO button that gets pressed. There's not a single SEO lever that gets pulled. It really has to do with your website's entire digital presence, from things to do specifically on your website with like how your site is designed, your load times, how users interact with your website, how well your content is written, how the code of your website is formatted, to things that happen completely off your website, like who is linking and talking about you, your reputation and reviews, how consistent your business information is across business listings, how well optimized your Google My Business page is, and frankly, just about anything that involves your brand digitally is something that can be fine-tuned to improve your overall search visibility. To think of this another way, Google's goal is to provide the most relevant search results they possibly can to people making searches. This means providing the best answers, the best website experiences, and in some cases, the highest rated services, because they recognize that by giving people the answers that they're seeking quickly, they can increase the chances that someone will continue to use their Google service. So ultimately, before you engage in some sort of overnight SEO trick you might have picked up on a forum or in the comment section of a blog, ask yourself, does this improvement provide an actual value for our customers, or does this improve the experience for our searchers or customers?
Got it. I really like that layman's explanation of it. And so there's a lot of technical things associated, as we can see on this slide, with how you can effectively do it. But the layman's kind of way of thinking about that is, if you're improving the experience for your users, if you're providing valuable content or a solid experience, there's a pretty good chance that that in some way, shape, or form ties back to kind of impactful SEO. Is that kind of a fair way of putting that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's 100% what I would say.
Awesome. So let's say that after this webinar, an operator starts doing some of these things in an attempt to improve their SEO. How long would it typically take for somebody to start seeing results?
Yeah, that's a great question, gigantic question. So it's going to depend on a couple of different factors. First, Google or other search engines, naturally, they have to recognize your change. So just because you make a change to your website doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to see it immediately. But this means that they've recrawled your website, and perhaps they've recrawled whatever digital property you've made a change on, like perhaps you made a change on your Yelp dedicated page. So once they digest this new information, then you will start to see changes. Google ultimately, though, does control their own bots that crawl and index the web. So while there are things that you can do to speed it up, it's ultimately going to be up to Google when they decide to recrawl and re-index your changes. I've seen changes get picked up in less than a day. I've also seen changes take months to be recognized. So it's all going to depend on Google's own thresholds and how they decide to proceed with crawling and indexing your digital assets. On top of that, another factor that Google uses to gauge how they rank you is basically the age of certain assets. So for example, if you write a perfectly optimized page that targets a specific keywords, and let's just say it's a perfectly optimized page, whatever, as close as you can get, while you may see an increase in visibility shortly after publishing it, you will likely to see it continue rise in visibility the longer it's published. Of course, like anything else, you can expect some fluctuation. There's hardly ever going to be a situation where you see a straight line moving upward and forward, but all things being equal, a strong asset will generally do better the longer it exists on the web. And there are tons of metrics that fall into this category, which the older, or maybe perhaps I should even say the more established an asset becomes, typically the better it improves your search engine visibility. That said, though, SEO requires significant amount of patience to get it right. It's a constant battle of fine-tuning, testing, waiting for results, and then back to more fine-tuning. For all the reasons we've kind of talked about and above, there's no exact timeline as to when you should be seeing results, as it's going to depend wildly on the amount of competition you have and how often Google is recrawling your website. So with that being said, sort of an industry accepted data point is that typically speaking, in 6 months, you're going to see a substantial bump in your search visibility, though results can happen much sooner, and in areas where it's a lot more competitive, can take a bit longer. Finally, as mentioned above, you aren't just competing against Google as you fight for your visibility. You're also fighting your direct competitors. After all, only one person can rank in first place for any given search result on Google. If your competitors are also attempting to improve their own search engine optimization, it's likely that it will take a little bit longer to break into the positions you need to be in. So in order to run a successful SEO campaign, you need to also have eyes on your competitors so that you can respond to the things that they're doing as well, which becomes more and more important the higher your visibility becomes. That said, once you're in there, the returns can be enormous.
Awesome. Thank you, Charles. I think it's worth just stopping and really doubling down on that, because I think this is something that we hear a lot from operators and frankly just members of the Storable team as well, is that SEO is not set it and forget it. SEO is an ongoing type of marketing practice that really takes a consistent nurturing for it to be an effective vehicle. But to your point, when you put that consistent work and attention into it, you can really get some amazing cost-effective results for your business. Is that kind of a fair summary?
Yeah, you've got it 100% correct. So while you can put out a website that has sort of the best general SEO practices, where the real rubber hits the road is in sort of that continuous optimization of your digital assets. So on Google's end, they're constantly changing their ranking algorithms. Your competitors are constantly doing different things. And there's almost always a way you can further tweak and improve something. So it's important that you're able to respond to those items as soon as possible when they require your attention. Otherwise, you do risk losing some of that search visibility that you've built. It's almost like fitness in a way. So you can pick up any workout routine from any major magazine, and generally speaking, you will probably see good results. That said, you can generally expect to have better results if you have a personal trainer helping you along the way that is taking into account the things that make you unique. Everyone is different, just like every website is different. So having that trained professional there helping you customize the things that you're doing based on your own personal needs, helping you maximize your strengths, minimize your weaknesses, and responding to the way your body reacts specifically is very similar to how a regular ongoing SEO program should work. On top of that, it's also important to recognize that SEO is never done. There's never a situation where we would say, okay, this is fully optimized and this no longer needs improvement. Something can generally always be improved and tweaked. Even if you are number one for all of the searches that you want, by the simple fact of ranking number one, now everyone is gunning for your position, and they will need to create and develop assets in such a way to beat you. And in turn, you will need to do the same to beat them. So the bar for what it takes to rank almost never goes backwards and almost always increases year over year as everyone becomes more competitive.
That's a fantastic analogy. Thank you, Charles. That's really cool. So I do want to talk about kind of the next chapter in the story, though. So like you've been walking through, right? Let's say that you've been making moves to improve your business's search engine visibility. You're staying on top of it because, again, you know that SEO isn't set it and forget it. What are some of the best ways to measure the results of your efforts to really know that what you're doing is working?
Another great question. Absolutely, this is something that's critically important. So in my opinion, this is going to come down to sort of what is the goal for the business. So do we want to improve traffic in general? Do we want to improve leads? Or maybe it's something else. Having good rankings is great, but what's the point of good rankings if they don't deliver good traffic? Having more traffic is fantastic, but what's the point if it's not locally relevant traffic that's increasing your return on investment? So it's important to be crystal clear about your goals. Following that, the average brick and mortar business, making sure that you are tracking increases in organic traffic from relevant locations, in addition to tracking increases in leads and conversions over time, in my opinion, is the very best way to track progress. And it's important to do this with seasonal changes in mind. So for example, looking at your month-to-month metrics might be a little misleading if you are going from a busy season to a non-busy season or vice versa. With this in mind, doing year-over-year comparisons are always my favorite ways to sort of compare data, as doing so kind of allows you to control for that sort of seasonality demand change. Of course, it goes without saying that 2020 will definitely be an odd year for tracking purposes since we don't really have a nationwide shutdown to really compare it to. So with that said, tracking key phrases can also be helpful and can give great insight into overall movement. But generally speaking, these days, almost every single search that happens will be happening at a completely granular level. And the results that person A will see could be completely different than what person B might see on the exact same search. This is going to depend on the device you're searching from, your physical location at the time, previous search history, results you've clicked on in the past, and more. So ultimately, in my opinion, the best way to gauge success is to track the things that are most important to your everyday general business. And typically, that's going to be A, how much is my local organic traffic growing? And B, how is that traffic converting for my ROI?
Yeah, that's really great information. I think this is so critical, is to be able to track and report on that. If you're going to put all that effort into making sure you're ranking high, you want to make sure that you're getting paid off. So appreciate you giving us some insight into kind of how you think about that, Charles. So before we wrap up, I do want to talk a little bit about COVID-19 in particular. So, how has it, changed the search marketing landscape? So can you kind of walk us through any impacts of that you have seen as a result of the health crisis?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest impact that we've seen by far has sort of been in overall search volume. So while SEO can continue providing you traffic over time, that's not going to be budget dependent. Based on clicks, for example. It does depend ultimately, though, on people making these actual searches. So if less people are making these searches for whatever reason, there's a national pandemic, there's some kind of severe market change, something like that, you would expect to see less organic traffic as a result in total volume. And that's essentially what we've seen thus far. So in the storage industry, we typically see March through May as one of the higher search volume periods of the year, as volumes are starting to rebound from holiday and winter lows. Now, of course, we've seen this reduction in total search volume over this period nationwide of about 10% to 20%. And on an individual basis, naturally, the mileage on that's going to vary. But that said, as of about the end of May, start of June, we really started to see those numbers kind of come back up to normal baseline. As we've talked about previously, SEO has a lot to do with what your competitors are actively doing. So during this lull, I highly recommend to take this time to really bolster your own SEO campaigns and take advantage of your competitors not prioritizing their own search visibility. The return on investment you stand to make from the increased organic traffic and leads when search volume fully returns to normal is going to be tremendous. So it's my advice to take this time when competitors aren't really doing much and really double down on the marketing efforts that are going to do the most for you in the long run.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think what you're implying there is really obvious, Charles, but I just want to make it explicit and make sure that kind of what I heard is correct. So to your point, when we go back and think about this whole set it and forget it and it not being the case for SEO, taking upwards of 6 months to really see the impacts of that, by people investing in it right now during these times, there's a really good chance that coming out the other end of the health crisis, when things start to kind of return to a normal, is when you'll really start seeing the payoff of that SEO investment. Is that kind of a fair summary of that?
Absolutely. So you'll start seeing that now as the volume hasn't disappeared. It's only down a bit, and it's actually, like I mentioned, it's coming back. So you are going to see those results happening very quickly. But sort of when we see businesses kind of return to that baseline, definitely you can expect a very nice bump, and things are going to go real well for you.
Awesome. Well, then one last question for you here.
Mm-hmm.
What is one piece of advice that you can offer the operators, and what they can do to implement in their own digital marketing that can help improve their search engine visibility?
Definitely. So we want to give you a nice take-home piece. And so one of the most effective and simplest things that a business can do to start improving their own search engine visibility, especially in the storage space, is to work on improving both your review quality and your review quantity, specifically on places like Google My Business and Yelp. Generally speaking, and especially more so for brick and mortar businesses like a storage facility, review count and score is becoming actually a very impactful piece for how people rank online. Google is constantly looking at these metrics that prove to them that you are providing a good web and customer experience. So with this in mind, it's obvious why Google would want to start including some of that information in their own ranking algorithms. A person who has a pleasant experience with a result delivered to them from Google will result in them making more Google searches and thus more ad revenue for Google. So improving your online reputation is also something that an SEO professional with that in mind might not be able to help you with directly, as the best way to sort of start developing and building your review scores is to start integrating this into your own customer journey, your own customer's journey with your business. Bringing it up during the final move-in process, having it printed on receipts, listed at the bottom of emails, doing follow-up email touches, or finding out other clever ways to bring it up when you have opportunities to touch your customers have been proven to be incredibly effective at generating better reviews. Best news of all is that this is the sort of thing that can be done basically for free. All you have to really do is sort of modify your business and customer outreach practices, and you'll start seeing those reviews going up.
Yeah, I love that advice, because just to call back to something you shared with everybody earlier, Charles, SEO, again, if you take it to the layman's, it's really about finding ways to make sure that you're providing a valuable experience to your customers, and that if you're continuing to provide those, then your SEO is going to go up. And reviews are a really, really practical, easy way to be able to measure how valuable that experience is for your consumers. So that's great.
Yeah, and it's critical.
Awesome. Yeah, so Charles, I wanted to take a moment to thank you for joining us today. I think I speak for everybody in attendance when I say that was incredibly valuable. I learned a lot. That was really, really good stuff. And I do want to give everybody or give us kind of a chance to address some of the questions that came in from the audience, though. And so we've got another member of the Storable team, Nico, joining us behind the scenes here. So Nico, I want to pass it over to you. Do we have any questions come in that we can address?
Hey, Matt. Yeah, thank you. We did have a few. I wanted to say we only have time to address a couple, it looks like, but any other questions that are outstanding, we'll be sure to follow up with you guys on the call and make sure we get an answer to you. One of the ones we had come in was, is it possible to guarantee me a #1 ranking on the search engine results page? We've gotten calls from people in the past claiming that they can do this for us, and just wanted to know if there was any legitimacy to their claims.
Excellent question. Maybe the most important, just because you see a lot of people sort of can make that claim, and it doesn't really mean a whole lot. So just kind of unboxing the question, can you guarantee a #1 ranking? As we kind of mentioned before, the search results I get making a search will be almost dramatically different from the person right next to me making the same search. And a lot of that's going to depend on sort of how you've used the web previously in your history, what things you've clicked on, et cetera. So the idea of guaranteeing a #1 rank is really kind of an outdated way of even thinking about search engines. It's really happening at a very sort of granular and sort of customized experience level. The results this person's going to get is going to be completely different than the results that we get. So in my opinion, the best sort of SEO program, it really, really tries to attack getting you to be as visible in any places that you can be visible for, that Google's going to find relevant for you. So while you can't always guarantee a #1 result, you definitely can do some very, very concentrated things that can improve your ranking and can get you into those spots more times than not. Now, ultimately, can you guarantee that ranking? That's not really possible. At the end of the day, Google does control their own ecosystem. If they decide that they don't want to rank you, which isn't technically how it works, but that's just how it's going to happen. So Google does control their own ecosystems. So you can't really guarantee a #1 ranking. That said, there are some very clear things that you can do to start improving your rankings, getting your search visibility up there, and giving you a better chance of showing up when someone makes a search for your service.
Okay, great. We have time for one more, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay, great. We have a question around Google My Business, specifically like optimizing, getting that set up the best way, and then around the photos that they choose. This operator has their business, Google chose the wrong photo for the street view. Is there a way to change that? What's the best way to work on your Google My Business profile?
Sure thing. So sometimes Google will pick the wrong street view. That's just one of the things that can happen when you have an AI that isn't, totally intelligent, kind of making decisions. So typically that's only going to happen in areas that are sort of newly developed. Typically, as Google gets more comfortable with an area, that's going to get improved. You can't control specifically what the street view is that Google has. You can report it, and in some instances you can kind of influence it, but you yourself can't really change it. So the alternative there, sort of the best answer, is to really give Google as much material as they need to give better photos. So definitely uploading really good photographs of your business, your interior, your exterior, places customers are going to see, things that customers want. That's going to be great, not just for the experience, not just for your SEO, but just an all-around good thing for general business practice. In terms of optimizing your Google My Business, the advice there will be the same advice I would give if you were talking about keeping your information sort of pristine across the whole web. And that's going to be making sure that your brand name is exactly as it appears. Don't try to throw anything special in there. Make sure that your phone number is accurate, that it matches the phone numbers that's at least listed in one of the places on your website. Ideally, it also matches the number that is listed on other local citation sites like your Yelps, your city searches, your Yellow Pages. Your address, also making sure that's consistent across the web is critical. And then again, moving into your website, and then even your operational hours are all very important to make sure you have those pieces, you have those photos, and if you have that sort of set up as a consistent experience across the web, more times than not, you're going to see some really, really great visibility from doing those things.
Awesome. Charles, thank you so much. Nico, thank you for handling the Q&A. As Nico mentioned, we did have some other questions come in, and we will be following up with you guys outside of the webinar, but we do want to respect your time and make sure we get you guys out of here just momentarily. But before we do, Charles, I really want to give you more of just a longer, heartfelt thank you for attending today. That was some really, really, really good information, and so we appreciate you taking the time to come, walk us through some of this SEO stuff.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nico. Thanks, Matt. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Very good. So, guys, before we let you go, real quick, just to remind you guys for the webinar series, just kind of here at a glance. In 2 weeks, we're really excited to be hosting another conversation within this optimize your marketing spend kind of territory. And in particular, we're going to be discussing how you can utilize pay-per-click advertising, which is also known as PPC, to acquire highly relevant leads for your facility. And so we're excited to be joined by yet another subject matter expert on that topic. So please keep an eye out for an email from us early next week for more details on that. But before we let you go, I would be remiss if I did not mention that at Storable here, our goal is to equip you guys with the tools and the information that you need to run your business successfully. And we see this webinar series as a very effective way for us to be able to share that information and help you guys kind of navigate, the landscape of the industry. And so with that in mind, though, we've also developed some best-in-class solutions for your digital marketing needs. And I wanted to take a moment to talk about those products and services that are, relevant to today's conversation. So first is Storable websites, which, we created Storable websites to make self-storage website design, SEO, transaction management simpler than ever before. And so with a sophisticated modern approach and really a deep industry expertise, our website product works to generate more organic leads while at the same time reducing demands on your management staff. And while they're very effective on their own, they're made even more powerful when you combine them with our digital marketing services. And so like we discussed today, SEO is not set it and forget it. It's not just a one thing you do and then you move on. And so you're going to need to continue investing in your SEO presence to reap those long-term benefits of that cost-effective marketing technique. But we also realize that not everybody has the time or expertise or frankly the desire to do that. And so, you could likely be using that time to provide value back to your business in a variety of other ways. And so we offer an ongoing SEO service to help keep your website finely tuned and operating at max efficiency to ensure that your business is being, organically discovered online as often as possible. But like Charles also mentioned today, we offer a service related to local listings. And those have a very big impact on your search rankings. And so thanks to our partnership with Yext, you guys can, rest easy knowing that your listing management service is working towards maximizing your domain authority to ensure that your business is being represented accurately and effectively wherever it can be found online. And then in 2 weeks, like I mentioned before, we're going to be discussing, what a strong PPC program can do for your business. And so we also offer PPC services that can help you cast an even wider net with your marketing efforts by putting your business kind of front and center, where your people are shopping for storage, where customers are. So, we lead them straight to your website and we let it do the rest of your work. So if you guys are interested in learning any more about these products or services, all you've got to do is send us an email at info@storable.com, and we're glad to tell you a little bit more about what we offer. But that concludes today's webinar. So if you guys do have any questions that come up throughout the week, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. If you send us an email at webinars@storable.com, we'll get back to you as soon as we can. But to everybody out there, I just want to say stay healthy, stay safe, guys. And we're looking forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks on our next webinar that's focused on having a strong PPC program. So thanks for attendance. Charles, thank you for joining us today. And everybody at home, have a great day.